Welcome in to ACC Baseball Etc, part of the D1 Baseball Podcast Network, as we continue preseasoning our way through all of the head coaches throughout the conference. I'm Daron Vaught. Bradley Smart is here, and today we are joined by Stanford's David Esker. Esky, great to see you. I hope the offseason has treated you well, and I'm looking forward to this coming year and seeing another Cardinal group in the ACC. It's still kind of new for us here within the league, but just as exciting as it was last year.
Yeah, no, hey, we're excited about this year. Really, gained a lot of experience a year ago with travel and just kind of learning some of the new teams for sure. Coming off of that 3-year Omaha run, our world's changed back to back for a couple years. One, we lost, 9 juniors to the draft, and we lost, one to the portal, which affected us. And then by the next year, we're in a new conference. And so it's been a couple years of change, and I think we've made some steps forward. I knew it was going to take us a minute to get us back to where we'd been. And so we're continuing that journey, and it'll be interesting to see this year. I feel excited about our position player group that we're going to put out there, and our pitching group. The exciting part about that is we really don't have anyone who's done it before. And so now we're going to have a couple people just kind of step forward and jump up and be able to compete and help us compete in the ACC, which we all know obviously is, among the top 2 conferences in the country, right? It's us and the SEC, and it's an exciting, great conference, and it's really tough. I felt like we played playoff caliber competition every week last year.
Yeah. And following up on that first bit, does it feel steadier given the changes that you alluded to the past few off seasons? Does this lead up to a year feel as steady as it has in a few years?
I'm going to say no, because again, the game is, hey, it's about pitching and defense, right? I mean, that's where you got to start. And so, the fact that we've, that our pitching is still a little bit unproven, keeps it a little unsteady. I think we've got some arm strength, but I think we learned last year, baseball teams do not live by arm strength alone, right? I mean, you got to pitch. And I think the fact that 94, 95 miles an hour, that's just another day at the office. That's nothing special anymore. And if you throw 94, 95, you better pitch, and you better throw it in that box with some competitiveness, because those umpires, with those TrackMan scorecards, they're not creating their own strike zones anymore. They want to see a high number when they get the report card back, and so you better pitch inside the strike zone.
Yeah, and when it comes to your pitching staff, a lot of guys back. You mentioned not a lot of them have sort of done it at consistently, but I'm sort of curious, how do you approach, the development side? Like, how do you get these guys ready for, the grind of, say, the ACC schedule?
Yeah, it's going to be a staff by committee. If anything, we have to be a pitching staff. I mean, we're going to run a lot of guys out there, and we're going to see who kind of that sticks, and can stand up to the week in and week out competition. And like I said, just the depth in the league is excellent, and the fact that there's 16 teams in your league instead of 10, and so it's different. It's different, and it's a good different, because I believe that you make it through the gauntlet of our league, you're going to be prepared, for postseason and have a chance to make a run. And so that's the exciting part, is that the fact that this league is so good and good enough that you're going to be ready for postseason competition, and you're going to be able to make a run at a national championship.
You also get returning what was a good high potential freshman class from last year, and one that David, I think and Rentaro is one thing, but the other guys, because of injuries, have to be moving around and that sort of thing. It felt like we did not see them maximized either. And I'm thinking of like a Charlie Bates, who was playing center field when healthy instead of his natural shortstop position, albeit he was great in center field. But I imagine
Yeah.
the plan would be to get him in his wheelhouse, right? So just, since the conclusion of last season, what have you observed about that group? Because you've talked about the value of 365 days before.
Yeah.
They got another 365 behind them by the time we get this season started.
Well, that's the part that that we're going to rely on. We're leaning on those 365, that development, right? And a lot of it is our ability to develop, which we like, and my assistant coaches do a great job of bringing these guys along. But yeah, you're right. We're going to get Charlie Bates back in his wheelhouse. He's going to be playing shortstop, and Rentaro Sasaki at first. Even he was a little disappointed at his performance last year, but I'm going to be honest with you. What he hit, 8 home runs, I think, and right around 280, 290. And I'm going to tell you, there was probably 6 almosts. I mean, there were 6 where the guy's back is up against the wall. And so, those balls go 5 more feet. And now he's looking at a 14 home run, 15 home run freshman year. And we've had plenty of unbelievable performers who've hardly played or not had those huge freshman years that, knock your socks off. And so, he had just basic normal progress. And, I look at, we had a first baseman a few years ago named Carter Graham, who was an unbelievable, great player for us. And I said, well, Rentaro hit 8 more home runs than Carter did his freshman year, because he didn't play at all his freshman year. And then Carter hit like 22 home runs his sophomore year. So, I mean, there's a chance that there are those years where a guy learns a lot, gets ready to play. And then when it's his time, he's got to be ready to produce. And that's what I think. I think it was baptism by fire. And I think, when it's Rentaro's time, and I'm hoping it's this year, he's going to produce. And and we're just looking to keep on developing him and getting him comfortable. And he's made great progress and great strides. But yeah, that freshman class from a year ago, and I can add in a little, Tatum Marsh, who had an unbelievable freshman year. JJ Moran, who's going to play third base for us out of the chute, and had some spot starts a year ago. But I mean, he's solidified. He's a legitimate player and someone that we counted on being ready as a sophomore. So yeah, there's going to be a few of that freshman class that we really loved a year ago, whether it's Sasaki and Bates and Moran and Marsh, that are going to be even more ready a year later.
Yeah, and then when you sort of look around the position player group, you're bringing back a lot of guys that have seen a lot of time. I think Jimmy Nadai, bringing him back is probably one of the biggest storylines. That's a guy that seems like he could have gone pro ball route. Can you talk about sort of what he brings back, both from leadership and as just a key piece in that lineup?
Well, Jimmy was a contributor on our last Omaha team. Didn't play full time, but there was a couple weekends where he had to step in and play and help us win and continue to win on our way to Omaha. And so, I'll be honest, it was one of my great disappointments had he signed, that he didn't get a chance to play a big role on a winning team as a frontline leader. But he's back and he gets that opportunity again. And he really is, taken that responsibility of trying to, of remembering where he was when his freshman year with that type of winning was going on, and understanding the development that had to go in the program with big losses of juniors, jumping into a new conference and just kind of, last year wasn't a failure. I think it was a step, but it was a step forward, just not as big a step as we would have all liked. We would have liked to, jump in and jump right back into the playoffs. That didn't happen, but certainly was a step forward as far as getting guys ready and getting our program back to playoff and title contention. So Jimmy is huge. He's a great leader. He reminds me of some of the great leaders like the Brock Jones and the Carter Grahams of the past that we really leaned on to kind of be able to be that voice in the locker room, to uphold the standard that we've developed here. And yeah, you're right. We could not have asked for a greater gift than to have Jimmy Nadai back. And you're right, it was close. He could have had opportunity to sign, but he wanted to bet on himself. It wasn't where he wanted to be drafted. It wasn't where he felt he was valued. And so he decided to bet on himself and come back for a year. And I kind of judge our program on how difficult it is to leave. And if it's an easy leave, like, yeah, you know what, I don't care where I get drafted or what, I'm just on to the next step. But I want it to be an environment where the guys have a tough time deciding to leave. And so he was one of those examples that when given the opportunity, he wanted to come back and bet on himself, knowing that he could get better and trying to get us back to where he remembers we were at.
So Jimmy, obviously, go ahead and put him in permanent ink, everyday guy. You've mentioned a couple of guys in different spots as well. I'm curious, just from a coaching standpoint, with the understanding that we've got several weeks before we get to opening day, sounds like you might have a pretty good idea of what the lineup card is going to look like. How does that change? And just kind of like, does it start in the fall? You kind of start to put together some of those machinations and it'll evolve here and there from that point?
A little bit. And then we've had some guys that have earned that opportunity. They're going to find out in the season, in games, what's going to be our best lineup. I mean, we haven't talked about Brady Reynolds last year, that when healthy, I think he probably played, probably hit for 3 weeks with a wrist injury, and probably, went from 350 to 310 during that time before he finally had to miss the rest of the season. But he's had significant playing time. A couple other out. Court McDonald was our leading hitter 2 years ago, right? Ethan Hott played center field when Charlie Bates went down and put up some numbers last year. And I haven't even talked about one freshman yet who are going to put some serious heat on some returning players to keep their jobs. I mean, we're lucky in that respect. And we've got some good players that, hey, if it's not their time yet, they're going to develop in season. But some of them could help us and play right away if they had to. I mean, I've got 3 unbelievably talented freshman outfielders, between Brock Kettleson, Phil Chung, and Brock Sell. And all 3 of them are going to be impact players in this program before it's all said and done. We may need some of them to impact us and help us this year. Rashad Hayes is a middle infielder that is going to be poised and ready to play full time. How quickly, I don't know. He's just a freshman, but we're certainly excited about him and what he brings. Teddy Tokheim. If there's one thing Teddy Tokheim's going to do, he's going to hit. He reminds me of one of my former players that I had at Cal Berkeley. I said, Teddy, remind me of Mark Canna. He really does. He stands up there like Mark Canna, and he's got some strength. And I'm excited about his future for sure. The key position that you haven't heard about yet is probably catcher. And we got a junior catcher in Luke Lavin who's going to come back, and he's improved, and it's ready, and and he's ready to step front and have it be his time. We got a freshman, Nolan Stoll, behind him who's going to develop and be ready to play when needed, and a Henry McDonald transferred over from Cal Poly who's going to provide us some depth. So we do have a semblance of what the lineups could look like. We've got great competition behind them, and we've got some players who can step in and really help us. Also have a transfer from Columbia, Eric Jung, who can play all infield positions, at third, short, and second, and play solid, and looks like he can help us if needed for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned him. I think Brock Kettleson's a name a lot of people are interested in, the two-way potential there. You talk some about managing, kind of where he can impact you the most and sort of what he's brought to the table this fall.
If you talk to my pitching coach right now, Brock Kettleson's going to, and we're playing 4 games on a weekend, he's starting one of them on the mound, and that being said, he's a freak athlete and a great baseball player as a field player. He's a great outfielder. Obviously, he's got a great arm, and his bat potential is off the charts. So he's an exciting player for sure, who can definitely impact the game right away. And you're right, there is some management there, right? You don't see a lot of two-way players who can start on the mound. Is he better suited to, maybe pitch in a couple innings on the weekend and then playing full-time in the outfield? I think if you're looking at him as a starter, it's going to be a big load to be an everyday outfielder. There's some DH spots and some chance to get him some at-bats, or if he starts later in the weekend, can he get a start or 2 in the outfield? and then sit a game and then be ready to start on the weekend. So that's yet to be seen. I don't think we've had that before. We've had some two-way players for sure, but they've been pitching in more small doses. And Thomas Eager sees Brock as someone who can maybe step out there and start for us, and that would be exciting for sure.
And you mentioned some of the others. Just like what do those other guys bring? Broxell, in particular, to what they can add for a lineup.
What's exciting about them is that they're all pro prospects, right? I mean, they all have a professional future. We're not just talking about good college players, but a Broxell has a professional future. Philip Chung, probably the fastest guy on our team, and he plays baseball fast. And so that's kind of exciting to have those kind of weapons on the bench, just waiting for an opportunity. But some of those older guys have earned a chance to have their opportunities in games too. So it'll be interesting to see how that all unfolds. And that is probably going to be, my skill as a manager is going to be how to manage getting that talent ready to play, but also giving the opportunity to the older players who have performed in games already. And just who plays the outfield and who DHs. I got Brandon Larson, who's another first baseman who's had some big at bats for us in the past, who's waiting in the wings, waiting for an opportunity to have some consistent playing time. And so it's a good problem to have, but there's going to be some management for sure. You got to keep that. You got, the locker room is as important as anything, and you want to keep them, motivated and keep the morale of your reserves as high as possible.
Yeah, a good problem to have is a good way of describing it. How do you kind of feel like, last year, obviously injuries really took, made things difficult for the lineup. Do you feel like the depth you have this year is maybe better than last year, and sort of how does it compare to previous teams?
I think so. When you look at last year, really, God, you talk about falling off a cliff, right? When we're 15-3 and we're 5-1 in conference, we just came off a 2 out of 3 win on the road at Carolina. We sweep Duke, and then we hit finals. And I'll be honest, I mean, if you're going to mark where that started, we missed a week of practice because of finals, and we just did, and we weren't that type of talent and that type of team that could just jump right into high level baseball. We really did a good job of preparing them, and they kind of trained to play at a high level. I think it really affected us, and then it affected our confidence a little bit, right? We ran into a weekend where we just did not play well. Cal, beat us up pretty good on a 3-game series, and we probably lost the 50-50 game in the 10th inning. We lost the lead in the 9th, and then lost in extra innings, a game that you could have salvaged the weekend. And then we go to Virginia on the road, and we got a couple close games. We got leads early in a couple of them, and then we lose a 1-run lead in the 9th inning on Sunday, the salvage game again, right? So you salvage those 2 weekends, and maybe you're keeping your head above water some. But as my former head coach and former boss Mark Marquis used to say, the keys to the season are sweep somebody and don't get swept, right? So. We didn't pay attention to those for a couple weekends, and those affect you. Those are big salvage ones that if you can just notch a 1 on a weekend and keep your head above water, that could it changes your season. And so I think that's what affected us last year. But I think we learned a lot. That has affected how we're practicing this year. I think maybe the slap in the face to the pitching staff some, in the sense that velocity isn't the end all. You got to pitch. And there's quality enough hitters in this league and lineups that you've got to navigate and be ready to work through. And then you got to make plays. You got to make plays in the big spot. So those guys that step up and can clutch in the big moments are going to be key for us.
David, I know Bradley's going to want to talk pitching. I've got a tangent before we get into that. Just to circle back on one of the first things you mentioned, last year was an adjustment from a logistics standpoint for you guys, trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to do this ACC travel? If I'm not mistaken, you guys wound up traveling on Wednesday basically every week for those, right? Did you experience anything that you since have thought better of and made? Have there been adjustments year to year as far as that's concerned that you know of to this point?
Yeah, I thought our support staff did a great job in just really monitoring where we were on our road trips. I thought we showed up and played very competitively on the road. I thought we obviously played well at Carolina. We were competitive at Virginia. Did not win those games. We played well at North Carolina State at the end of the year. So there was some instances where I felt like we handled and managed the schedule well. What was interesting is I don't know that we were as good when we returned back to campus and maybe kind of, getting our feet back on the ground and managing the week leading up to the home series after the road. And maybe that's a little bit where I'm going to probably try to tweak around a little bit. We're going to play more Wednesday midweek games than Tuesday midweek games, right? I mean, just there's some of our trips we didn't get back till, whether we get back Monday morning or aren't able to leave until Monday during the day. That's an adjustment, right? And so is that 24-hour adjustment, then playing a Tuesday game, is that the best thing for you? And then flipping around and trying to get ready for the weekend. So, I think a little bit on how we're scheduling. Usually if we're home headed east, I'm probably going to play Mondays after weekend series. And if we're home returning from the east, I'm probably going to play more Wednesdays and give us that extra day to get our feet on the ground.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. The turnaround time cannot be fun on a player.
I know that the East Coast, they don't love coming out here and playing that 6 or 7 o'clock game, but it feels like 10 p.m. for them. And then if it goes long, and but we're doing it 5 times. We're headed out east, and that's what. Adapt or die, right? I mean, we've got to figure it out. We've got to figure it out, and we've got to get ourselves to play high level quality baseball on the road. And we played some good teams. We played some good teams on the road last year, and it was a good experience.
Yeah, and segueing kind of the pitching, you've talked a lot about pitchability and kind of throwing more strikes. I'm curious. You mentioned Kettleson, but you have obviously a ton of names back. Who are some of the guys to know going into the spring?
Yeah, I think you're going to need to know, right off the top, Nick Dugan and Aiden Keenan. I think those are two off the top that are gonna have to step up and have good years for us. Sam Garwal is a junior, and I have a group of players that have pitched a lot, and I'll be honest, I've kind of met with them and as a group, and I said, it's time, it's time, and when you speak of the Torin O'Harens and Trevor Moores and the Cassius Thomases and the Ryan Specioks and the Ben Reimers, if you look at the number of appearances that they've had over the last 2 years, it's time. Right. I mean, this is the year that we need them to step up and take advantage of that experience of having been on the mound over and over and over again, and then developing, between the years that their stuff's better, their knowledge should be better, and then obviously just working on developing the secondary pitches and pitchability. So that's a group of 5 guys that we're counting on, that there's shown development, and it's exciting to see how far they can reach and help us. But in addition to that, there's going to be some other names. Liam Golden, I thought, was a freshman last year. He didn't pitch much. I don't really even know what his numbers, but when he did pitch, he showed promise and just kind of the way he carried himself on the mound. I said, there's something here. There's something there with his competitiveness and his poise on the mound. And so, he's going to have an opportunity to pitch much more as well. And so Cohen Gomez went out and had a pretty good summer out in the Northwoods League, and another name that he's going to pitch. We're going to run him out there. Austin Steves, left-handed. I feel like we're going to have a chance to run a few more lefties out there and maybe just because they're left-handed. And I thought we faced a couple staffs last year that were pretty well-stocked left-handed. I thought Duke's staff a year ago they had a lot of left, and they could run a lot of left at you just because they needed to neutralize left-handed hitters. But between Sam Garwal, who's left-handed, Quentin Marsh, who's a freshman, left-handed, Austin Steves, left-handed, Andrew Shaw, freshman left-hander, and Mike Erspamer, who's one of the most impressive freshmen we have, he's got a hammer breaking ball, and he's got a little cockiness to him, and we're gonna have to run him out there in big spots as a freshman. So I'm excited to see. Obviously, if he performs as well as he did against our hitters, and I thought we ran a pretty competitive, challenging inter-squad lineup against them. We'll see. We'll see if that matches up in game time. Right when the lights go on, it's always a little different, no matter what they throw in practice, they throw a tick harder in a game, and no matter what, sometimes it goes the opposite. They no matter, they had a lot of control against their friends, not as controlled against an opponent. So that's going to be what we're going to have to see. But there's a lot of names out there, and a lot that are going to have to step up and rise to the occasion to give us a chance to be the team we want to be.
Last thing for you, David. Last year, when we had this same conversation entering that season, you and I talked about some things that you were looking forward to, getting back to some ACC places throughout the schedule, and of course, knowing that you're not going everywhere in year number one. What's on the schedule that excites you for this year?
God, you know what? I'm going to grab my schedule here. We're going to Wake Forest, right? We got Pitt coming to Stanford. We go to Virginia Tech. We go to Louisville. We go to Notre Dame. So those are places that, I've been to Louisville once as the head coach at Cal. We played at Louisville. Great atmosphere. I loved playing out there. I'm kind of excited. We got a back-to-back, Florida invasion into California. We got Florida State and Miami coming to Sunken Diamond back-to-back. And that's unusual, right? North Carolina State and Clemson both come out to Sunken Diamond. Those are matchups that probably would never occur even in a non-league, atmosphere that we get to experience here at Stanford. So, it's a great schedule. Having Miami and Florida State both coming to Sunken Diamond this year, it means one thing. It means we're going to both Florida State and Miami next year, because that's how we cycle. So we're gonna be going to Florida in a year. But yeah, like I said, it's a relentless schedule. Right? There are no breathers, and you've got to play, and it comes down to you got to play that weekend, and then you got to be able to play game one, and then and play them really one at a time. That's so cliche to say, but you don't have a chance to necessarily get down after a weekend. And I think one thing I did notice is everybody in the league is going to go through a rough spot, and you got to mentally recover. Everybody went through it. You looked at even the best teams in our league a year ago. There was a rough patch in there at some point that they had to overcome and flip it. And so, I think that was kind of the lesson. And we went through it with that Cal weekend, and then into Virginia. We just did not recover as quickly as the best teams in the league did a year ago.
Yeah. You mentioned at Wake Forest. That's to open the ACC season, if I'm not mistaken. I'm starting to get some games on my personal schedule doing play-by-play. Fingers crossed. I think I'm going to see you guys opening night of ACC play. So that should be fun. Yeah.
Winston-Salem. Yeah, we'll be there Friday night on March 6th. And they had a tremendous club last year, and some really good players and some pitching that's coming back that we're going to have to deal with again this year. But that you can say that about every weekend. Pitt was a rising club a year ago and played very well at the end. And Virginia Tech is always tough, and from what I understand, even tougher at Virginia Tech. So, you got to deal with that. Clemson and Coach Bakic's club, they're always well prepared, and it's a good, very good team. Louisville, obviously a College World Series team a year ago, and they seem to do a great job of just kind of restocking and reloading yearly. and then the Florida schools, Miami, Florida State. Nothing more needs to be said. They're such great reputation schools. They both have great coaches, and they're looking to be World Series teams. This year as well. Notre Dame got us last year. They came in and beat us in a couple close games, and that was a tough series. So we get to go down there and experience South Bend, which I haven't been there before. So I'm excited to see that.
Really cool. That's it for me, Coach Bradley. You got anything else on the way out?
No, I think I'm good. That was a good schedule analysis you just threw out there.
Oh. Hey, I didn't even talk about it. I got North Carolina State, and I'm telling you, Coach Avent, I tell you what, he can put out team year after year after year, and usually when the cards shuffle, North Carolina State's there in the end, and obviously I had a great team last year and went down to the wire, and I know we pulled out a couple games there, but they were hard fought and they were really talented. And then we end up with our Cal Berkeley, and we got our rival right before the ACC tournament. So we get to be a little local before we fly out for the tournament. But Coach New will have them ready to go.
Love it. David, great to talk to you as always. And we look forward to opening day coming here in the very, very near future.
It's coming, right? It's coming. And hey, with these new rules, we'll be practicing earlier than we have in the past, right? We can open practice on the 11th now and don't have to wait all the way to the 26th and give us a chance to get prepared. We're going to need that time. I mean, we're going to, and like I said, we got to get our pitchers ready to go. And hopefully when it all shuffles, we need a couple big performers to step forward. So that's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting because I think we're preparing to try to have those guys develop and get there.
Yeah. Certainly look forward to seeing them. Coach, appreciate it, and we'll see you again soon.
All right, guys.